Let's get started understanding the TrueFoundry platform. The first thing that I want to show you is the integrations tab, within which you have something called clusters. So what you see here, this particular UI or this particular web application is actually known as the control plane, and this control plane can be connected to multiple clusters. And what do I mean by clusters? Clusters corresponds to Kubernetes clusters. Your Kubernetes cluster could be running in AWS, on GCP, Azure, or anywhere else. And if you have TrueFoundry installed in the cluster and it's pointed to this particular control plane, you'll be able to see that cluster under this particular tab. So as you can see, I have one cluster that's connected to this control plane. It's called a demo cluster, and it's actually running on AWS in our cloud. And the location is the EU West one, and then some of the other information about the cluster that you can see here as well. And I'm actually connected to this cluster as well, which means I can actually do things with this cluster. The concept that I want to introduce next is the concept of a workspace. A workspace is how you sort of divide the cluster into subclusters, let's say. And these subclusters can have access controls, limitations on the resources, and so on and so forth. So for example, let's create a workspace wherein we'll do the rest of our deployments. If you're actually using the free tier at app.foundry.com, then while you're logging in for the first time, you'll be prompted to create a workspace, and that is the only workspace that you'll have for you to utilize. But if you have to Foundry installed on your particular organization in your organization, then you should be able to create new workspaces as well, given that you have the permission on that cluster. So here I have this cluster on which I have the permission to create more workspaces. So I'm going to call this the Eminist workspace, and the environment I'm going to choose this is dev, because this is my dev cluster or demo cluster. And for resource limits, I can set the CPU limit as 1, maybe memory limit as 2000 MB, and maybe the storage limit as 2 GB. This is especially useful if within a team, within an organization, you have teams that are working on specific projects, and you want to make sure that they don't, utilize more resources than that is required. So you can set limits on their workspaces, and the members of that team, you can be rest assured that they will not, blow past the resources that you've set for them. Another field that you can configure in a similar manner is the supported instance families. So within each cluster, there are different kinds of nodes or machines that are available. For example, there might be T3 machines, T3A machines, M6I machines, M6A machines. These are all different kinds of nodes that are available within AWS. So for a particular workspace, you can configure which instance types are available for use within that particular workspace. For example, let's say G5, G4DN. These are all GPU sort of GPU machines. And if particular workspace does not require GPU, you can make sure that no one accidentally uses GPU by unticking these boxes while creating the workspace. So once that is done, I'll hit create, and that should create the workspace for me. And now you can add the collaborators to this workspace. For example, if there are other team members who's working on this project with me, then I can add them. And I can also decide what sort of permission they need to have, right? So for example, if I want to give them permission to make deployments, then I can make them the workspace member and save changes. Now you can see that this particular user is also added to this workspace. These workspaces, they create a sort of isolation within the cluster, and you can decide how to create the separation between different workspaces. Maybe you can have a workspace for each project, or maybe each team can have a workspace, and so on and so forth, right? In our case, we've created a workspace called Eminist workspace for this particular problem statement, and we'll be using this workspace in the following videos.